What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So now that we're a few days away from September, discussion around the next Nintendo Direct has started to really pop up online. And in fact, now we're seeing reports and even some pointing to the exact day that this could happen. And apparently it's not a day that we would have expected. Well, we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony as they do continue to explore this live service sector that really hasn't gone well for them. But Herman Holst kind of sees it a different way with these failings. And Shinobi, it's coming out here pretty soon. Reviews went live, and it's a beautiful time right now. Ninja Gaiden and 2D showing back up with an awesome release, and now Shinobi doing the same. All that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with the Nintendo Switch 2 and, of course, those game key cards, because now we have another twist in the early saga for these cartridges. We can see this, though, posted up. This is over on Automaton Media, saying the Switch 2 game key cards are not eligible for preservation by Japan's National Diet Library. So they store over, it says, 9,600 Japanese video games in proper archival conditions. The library is a key institution for domestic game preservation. When asked about the game key cartridges, the representative there said, only physical media that contains the content itself is considered eligible for preservation. Since a game key card on its own does not qualify as content, it falls outside of our scope for collection and preservation. I mean, yeah, you may as well just try to figure out a way to preserve the digital media, since that's all it really is. It's a key to then download that. We understand that, and this just shows even more so that is not necessarily tricking anyone, and I don't think it is. Again, just the reception online shows that, and now you have full institutions that generally preserve, as they say, 9,600 different pieces of media from games. Well, they're not even touching the game key cards, because what's the point? If the servers go down, that game key card means nothing because there's nothing on it in the first place. Also, we may have a glimmer of hope for people hoping that Age of Imprisonment is coming out this year. This we can see over on Nintendo Life, as they are citing Koei Tecmo announcing their Tokyo Game Show 2025 lineup, which does include Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, as not only it'll be there, it'll be playable. Now, keep in mind, Tokyo Game Show starts September 25th, and as we will be talking about here soon with the idea of a direct happening before that, well, we may have even the release date by then. So, of course, Koei Tecmo would like to show up with this big next Zelda Warrior-style game to showcase at Tokyo Game Show. So, I mean, it's good news. People are going to be there. They'll have a chance to have hands-on time with this game. And also good news because maybe it is a title that Nintendo sneaks in there right at the end of the year. And I'm thinking maybe that is that weird, like, first week of December kind of release. Otherwise, a January or February release is also on the table there, I would assume. But I guess we'll find out here pretty soon, as we're expecting a direct here to happen in a few weeks. Oh, and we did get some numbers around Gamescom opening night live, how it did online with viewership. You can see this. It's over on Streams Charts. Anyway, they say Gamescom opening night hits over 2 million live viewers, a 60% increase from last year, which that year was also an increase over the year prior. And yeah, I mean, this has been the whole push for Jeff Keighley. Like, his idea is continue to build up multiple pillars throughout the year. My only thing is they're so close together now, where you have Summer Game Fest, then Gamescom a few months later, and then the Game Awards a few months after that. So it's like all this happens in the span of, what, 6 months? Maybe a little less than that. So you don't necessarily have the greatest reveals somewhere in the middle usually, and that falls on Gamescom. Even though it's the biggest trade show of the year, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have some big, wow, that's amazing reveals, mostly just updates on games. But, I mean, it's working so far for Jeff Keighley to see these sorts of increases as he goes along, because I'd expect the same thing to happen year over year with the Game Awards coming up here in December. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and the idea that there would be a general direct, get this, in September. I know, right? Who saw that one coming? So September typically is when we would see Nintendo have some sort of direct, and usually we'd expect it to be a general direct, and it coincides perfectly with Tokyo Game Show, which, I mean, in Japan, Nintendo being, like, at this point, the console manufacturer in Japan that everyone is buying hand over fist for, like, even the Switch 2, as we see those numbers continue to roll along. Essentially, however much stock is there in Japan that week, it just sells through, which we'll learn more and more as we get into the holiday season to see how really that lines up with what Nintendo's able to provide. However, a September Direct being pretty standard does have a bit of a twist here, and we'll start here with VGC. As they say, reports of a Nintendo Direct have circulated for weeks. Now, Switchforce has suggested that a presentation will be held in September. Now, sources, they say, have told VGC that a Nintendo Direct presentation is in fact planned for mid-September. It's also worth noting that aside from 2024, Nintendo Direct has been held virtually every September since the Nintendo Direct presentations began. And I mean, last year it was that weird in-between period for Nintendo where they weren't ready to really showcase the Switch 2 like that, but they didn't have a bunch of Switch 1 stuff to show, so they were just kind of like, we'll skip this for now, right? That's the idea of the Direct, is when they're ready, they can hold it. It usually makes sense for them to do it ahead of Tokyo Game Show. Well, if we go over here, let's see, as VGC points this out over on X from Switchforce, Nintendo tried to phone an emergency about the missing Switch 2 games, but they accidentally dialed 912, reference to September 12th, and I guess that then leads into the idea of this being on a day you wouldn't expect, because that is indeed a Friday, and if you look at it, it's the day before the 40th anniversary for the Mario series. Okay, so that does all kind of line up with the idea of them having something Mario anniversary related. Sure, it makes sense for them to do some sort of celebration here, since next year we'll have the big Mario movie, so you'd want to really get just more and more people thinking about Mario so they can also then go see the movie. Why not hit them with some nostalgia? Works every time. Anyway, the idea of it being on a Friday is something that is different. I mean, it is. September, not so much. That's pretty clear. It's almost obvious, sure. But Friday is interesting. So in total, we've had 8 directs of different kinds happening on Friday. For the last general direct, we have to go back to May 17th, 2013. So yeah, quite a while ago for that one. And I mean, if we look at the last direct that's happened on a Friday at all, any kind, it was an Animal Crossing direct in 2021. A fun fact though, the very first Nintendo Direct did take place on a Friday. That was October 21st, 2011, back in the Reggie Fils-Aimé days. And look, there's still a lot of stuff that Nintendo, I assume, would want to get going here with things like Metroid Prime 4 and, as we talked about, Age of Imprisonment. Now that Kirby Air Riders has been placed November 20th, it does make me wonder where Metroid Prime 4 is going to fall in here. I think it's going to be before Kirby Air Riders, and it wouldn't shock me if it was maybe right at the end of October or right at the beginning of November. But if that's the case, well, they'd want to get this thing going so they could date that game, and September 12th, sure, they can do a direct for it there. Although, I also can't rule out the idea of them just doing a full-on direct just for Metroid Prime 4, so they can get that in motion themselves away from this general direct. I mean, then it can happen the week before the general direct, it can happen this week, whenever, really. It's just whenever they feel like doing it, they can. But it still wouldn't shock me if it was part of the general, and then they announced that there is just a dedicated direct after the fact. But still, Nintendo would want to start lining some other stuff up, at least teasing things as they go into 2026, because I mean, all the way up until June of next year, they're still in the first launch, like the launch year of a console that they are selling at the highest price point they ever have so far, and coming off the heels of a very popular, very successful system. There's a lot of work still to be done here with the Switch 2, so you kind of want to get things rolling here, starting September 12th, I guess. We'll keep an eye out for that, as VGC is also backing this up, and the idea, once again, of it being on a Friday is different than you would normally expect, although it is September, so I know, shocking. Next up, let's talk about Shinobi, as that is out on the 29th, so just a few days from now, because reviews did go live yesterday, and we can see this over on Metacritic, sitting at an 88. That's what I'm talking about. We got Ninja Gaiden Ragebound coming in at, like, it was an 84 and 85, depending on the platform you're looking at. Here, though, we have Shinobi coming in at an 88 just after that. It's great. It's great to see these franchises, these originally known as 2D franchises back in the day, making a return in that classical format with these higher scores. Awesome stuff. So if we look at the split here, 41 positive and 2 mixed. All right, let's see. The Gamer gave it 100, saying it's one of the most gorgeous, creative, and satisfying games of 2025 and has effortlessly clawed its way to becoming my frontrunner for Game of the Year. Wow, okay, PlayStation Universe gave it a 95, saying with its gorgeous hand-drawn art and kinetic combat, Shinobi Art of Vengeance is one of my favorite games of 2025 and one of the best 2D action platformers in years. Game Informer gave it a 93, saying Shinobi Art of Vengeance should serve as a blueprint for delivering a retro-facing experience as an absentee franchise, while still leveraging modern technology and game design conventions. All right, let's go to the other end of the spectrum here. Let's see. Game Rant gave it a 70, saying if Shinobi Art of Vengeance was more challenging and had more depth to it, it would potentially be the best game in the franchise to date. All right, looking at Comic Book, Gay gave it a 70, saying Shinobi Art of Vengeance loses its footing a fair number of times, but that doesn't completely overwrite when it swiftly strikes its target with the kind of grace only a ninja can wield. So, looking through a lot of these reviews, people are really happy with the art style and the graphics, and I agree. If you download the demo, the game looks awesome in motion. Also, the combo system is some kind of described it as organic, and yeah, I wasn't really told any combos, but just doing the typical, if you're playing on PlayStation, square, square, triangle, square, triangle, square, you start to see the combos kind of flow together, and it's very satisfying there. And while the runtime was mentioned as being shorter than they would have liked, all the levels seem to be packed full of like secrets and extras and other things to find. So I'm on board. I'm really excited. The only issue here is there are so many games hitting right now, and I keep seeing these games pop up. 86 for Metal Gear. Here comes Shinobi with 88. I don't know what Lost Soul Aside is going to get, but if it's in there in the mid-80s as well, it's like, wow, okay, a bunch of great games just dropped, and there's like no time to play them all. Next up, let's talk about Sony and Herman Hulst continuing to comment on their live service strategy, and it's going to be a good one when he sits down with the Financial Times. Okay, let's take a look. This, we can see, is posted by Genki. Now, the thing with this is Financial Times has this all paywalled, but I'll still have it linked down below, if you want to check it out there. If you're a Financial Times subscriber, you can read through all of this here. Otherwise, I'll link to Genki so you can check it out there. Say Herman Hulst says the number of live service releases is not so important, and that PlayStation have learned from the failure of Concord. By the way, you know what shocked me recently to hear? It's been a year since Concord came out. That was like August 23rd, 2024. That sounds crazy, right? I don't know why that caught me off guard. It's like, it's been a year since Concord came out? He says, quote, I don't want teams to always play it safe, but I would like for us, when we fail, to fail early and cheaply. Yeah, Concord wasn't a cheap failure. I mean, some were saying it was, conservatively speaking, $250 million to $300 million. And, I mean, they bought the studio, and there's a whole thing, so yeah, that would probably get you to about face on some of the projects that are in development then, and it seems like they did. So the number of live service releases is not so important. What is important to me is having a diverse set of player experiences and a set of communities. We have since put in place much more rigorous and more frequent testing in very many different ways. The advantage of every failure is that people now understand how necessary that oversight is. We take a very intentional approach to IP creation, understanding how a new concept can turn into an iconic franchise PlayStation that can then again become a franchise people beyond gaming. Now, the whole thing here with Sony and their big push currently, while gaming first and foremost, as they've talked about multiple times, they're expanding outward. So let's say just in an alternate universe where instead of Concord failing, we went the path of it succeeding, like completely. It is a breakout success for them. They would have then worked to probably turn into some kind of movie or anime series. They would have had a bunch of merchandise, just other initiatives outside of gaming, because they do control a bunch of different paths that these entertainment paths that these different games can turn into. All right. So while the live service thing hasn't gone well for them, him talking about them putting up more rigorous testing does make me wonder if that's what happened to Fair Games a bit. Like, we don't see it anymore because it missed milestones or didn't go through testing or it wasn't favorable in testing. And it's kind of back to the drawing board. Jay Raymond leaves, and maybe we just don't see Fair Games ever again, and they just kind of pretend like it was never a thing. Or maybe it just comes back after going back into development for years and years and it's better. Imagine the pressure if you're the team with Fair Games, it goes back into development and they're like, okay, now you got a few more years to work on it, comes back and it still gets completely rejected. I think it's just that name. Like, you might have to rename the whole thing at this point. But from there, of course, Blue Point's project, Ben's project, those are like multiplayer live service kind of games, those getting canceled. This all makes sense after Concord because they had to have some kind of reaction internally. I mean, after just how there's no other way. It was just devastating, right? How big of a failure that was, not just money, but also the image of PlayStation with these live service games. Can't be understated. So it makes sense why he's mentioning they want to fail early and cheaply rather than late and Concord levels. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Replaced, which we saw this game for the first time years ago, and it looked super cool. It was this retro pixel art style cyberpunk game. It looked awesome, but it's been delayed multiple times now, and it is a shame because I think that is one of the things I've been asking for and many other people. Let's get a game that it's just super unique and stands out. This game certainly does that. Well, now I have some good news. People who have been wondering about this game, because it seems like we're starting to close in on its release. Okay, so they put out this development update video you can see here. And in this video, they at least explain what they've been doing now. As they have mentioned, there have just been multiple delays now. They say the studio is nearing the end of production, and they're moving into intense testing and polishing phases. Now, since this announcement, they mention every aspect of the game has been updated and improved. That does include environments and story context. The game features thousands of handcrafted pixel art objects and an impressive amount of pixel art animation. Even like the protagonist alone that you see in all of these different gameplay videos, more than 600 animation clips just for that one character there on screen, which is crazy. The game aims for a seamless blend of cinematic and gameplay elements. Those are achieved through careful blocking of scenes, 2D animation, camera angles, 3D object movement. In one part in this video, they go through and show how they generate the scenes, and it's so many layers kind of stacked one in front of the other. Now, when is the game coming out? They say it's set to release in spring 2026, and the final trailer with the exact release date will be shown later this year. So probably looking at, I don't know, maybe in April, really April or May. Still though, the game has looked awesome every time they've shown it. And the fact that after they gave us a look at this this development update trailer and you see all the parts going in, that's the thing. With game development, we don't necessarily see everything happening in development. We just kind of assume that, okay, it's difficult to make a game. But then you see a couple of people show you all the stuff they're doing, and you're like, yeah, okay, that looks really hard to do. So there you go. It's just taking more time because they want to make sure it comes out right and not busted. So, okay. That's fine. Again, plenty to play right now. I'd rather this game come out in like the best condition possible because I do think there's a lot of potential for Replaced to stand out from all the other games, but also just be really good. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, what drives you most to buy a specific game system? 80%, by the way, say exclusive games. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, look, if there's an exclusive title that's on in a specific system and you want to buy that or play that exclusive game, and yes, buy it, you're buying the system. Like, that's just how it's always been, how I've always known it, and I'm sure many other people who are a bit older have known it. There's just an interesting, a very different push, I'll say, where it's like, oh yeah, games are just on everything, so pick where you want to play, I guess. Anyway, my digital library is already there. That was 13%. I get that too. The achievements and trophies, I will say, a little lower than I thought. I figured there would be people who are just completely hooked on the idea of trophies or even building up their achievement score as being something that keeps you, say, in the Xbox or the PlayStation ecosystem. Not so much. I mean, when it comes down to it, exclusive games still sell hardware, and I mean, Nintendo proves that consistently especially with the Switch 1, and now what we've seen with the Switch 2. PlayStation kind of teetering on the edge, but they're still selling their PlayStation 5 system at more than 82 million units now, not even 5 years in. And they also have games that they put their timed exclusive or third-party time exclusive. They still at least do attempt to dabble in the exclusivity, but even that window for them continues to shrink. And we'll finish up with a comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Sorry I Am Late. The Valve Steam console needs to be called the Kettle. just to complete the image. The kettle would have been a good like code name, and maybe we find out more information because they'll do those sit down interviews after things come out, like the Steam Deck. They did all kinds of interviews with developers about it. Maybe we find out that was like one of those like whiteboard code names they had written up as they were going through things. Oh, kettle, that'll be one. The hardest part though is always naming a system, or really naming anything at this point, but a system though. The obvious thing is Steam Box. Like now with Xbox, for example, box can be then correlated to console. I don't know if Steam Console makes sense because then it'd be in category consoles, so it's like Steam Console. I still think Steam Box makes the most sense. Steam Machine, you can't go back and do. Just keep it simple. Steam Deck, okay? Steam Box. Let me know though what your best idea is for I guess the name of this Steam game system. Keep in mind it'd be a little box that you put under your entertainment center, and it'll play like the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox, something like that. What would you name it to then appeal to the mass mainstream audience that Valve continues to try to tap into with some of these releases? And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe we'll hear more about just how gamers are getting really tired of the optimization struggles that we're seeing for games, while a lot of the focus seems to be mostly on trying to make really good games look just that much better. I'll leave it right below. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.